Hello, and welcome to the Thrive Mindset Podcast. I am so glad you are here with me. My name is Carrie Dahle, and I am your host. I am an entrepreneur, author, podcaster, manifester, and motivator. And I am on a mission to empower you to create the life of your dreams. If you are looking to up-level your life, relationships, finances, productivity, and success, you have come to the right place. I will share with you tools, resources, strategies, my failures, and my successes that have all helped me achieve the life of my dreams. It is my goal with this podcast to help you see your potential and empower you to create the life of your dreams. So let's get to it. Well, welcome back to the Thrive Mindset Podcast. I'm Carrie Dahle, your host, and today is a very, very special day for me. Why? Because it's been a year. An entire year of me doing this podcast. And also because I have my favorite person who's returning today, Jeff, to share with you guys about his year. Because I feel like you guys always hear about me and the people in my life and all the things we've been doing, but it's been a year. It's been a year since you've heard from him. So hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm glad you came back.
Well, I've been here for the other 364 days. I just haven't been invited into the studio.
Well, you were invited today. So maybe we should start with your year. And, last we left off at our last Triple R retreat, which then we just returned from one last week.
We did, and it was good. It was amazing. It was warm, which is what we like in January in the Northern Hemisphere, right?
Yeah, but what about last year? When we set out last year, you had goals and dreams and things you wanted to accomplish. How did it go for you?
It went extremely well. I'm trying to think about the actual goals, but as the year progressed, I think I accomplished a goal that I didn't know I had the last time we spoke, which was to fully embrace and gracefully accept, to the best extent possible that I can gracefully do anything, uncertainty. I really, really enjoyed overcoming the fear of the unknown. And that was something that I didn't expect. I had laid out some goals. I had laid out a handful of things. I accomplished a handful of things that I really wanted to accomplish. There was a few things that I didn't that are still on the list. And honestly, what I really enjoyed doing the most was just reshuffling said goals and not holding myself into this paradigm that is completely rigid and without flexibility. And that combined with just really kind of enjoying, I don't want to say the knot in my stomach. I've had that in the past where my personality over the years has been such, me, I'm just a tad of a control freak. I like driving. I like the doing. I like being in control. One thing that I really got comfortable with this year, and it's still a work in progress, is just kind of taking a back seat and just realizing that wherever you go, there you are. Doesn't mean you have to have, and it doesn't mean that you can just be completely aimless all the time. I mean, that's certainly acceptable if that's your thing. For me, I'm not interested in that completely, but accepting that there are detours and they happen for a reason was a really enjoyable discovery.
Yeah. So you spent not a lot of time, but you spent time here and there recalibrating, right? You didn't just do it in January.
I spend every day recalibrating.
Okay. So then how did you adapt, or what things did you use to overcome those boundaries, those restrictions that you thought you had? That
I think a lot of that was learning. And part of this, I would say too, is kind of we'll call it a practice what you preach relative to our kids. One of the things I obviously love and have incredibly wonderful memories of my parents. But one thing that was always so frustrating for me ever since I can remember being a little kid was when my parents, specifically my father, would say, "Because I said so." And I can still hear that. It still kind of almost grates on me just saying it. And he passed away, a decade and a half ago. But more along, that's the kind of the parental do as I say, not as I do kind of a thing. And what I've been trying to do with our kids as they are all adults and in their 20s and watching them navigate life was, as a parent, I was trying to this year especially teach them to not beat themselves up, to not shame themselves, to not post on social media how horrible the decisions they made, just to love themselves and just to realize that it's okay and life works out. But what I realized through that, because I see it so clear as day with the kiddos, I had to look in the mirror and say, I need to do the same thing for myself. And I don't know if we talked about it last time. It's just kind of a little thing. I learned it years ago from one of my books, podcasts, is that, I don't know if we talked about it, but that's kind of my little mini routine at night is to myself. I don't say it out loud. It's just in my head. It's just, I reflect on the day and I focus on something that I'm very proud of for the day. Then I consider something that I didn't really measure up that I would have liked to. And it could be something simple as, I didn't get something off my to-do list that I said I was going to, or boy, I didn't use the best words that I could have with the kids or with family or you or friends or something at work or whatever. And then the most important part is to go, I forgive myself. It's okay. And I'm not forgiving myself to anybody else or to a higher power or cause, or it's to myself and only myself. And then I go, okay, I'm going to bed because we're going to take another crack at it tomorrow. And it is an extremely powerful tool that works for me. And I guess it's a little bit more of an elegant way of the old bumper sticker that just says, let that blank go.
Okay. So you learned new things about yourself. You learned how to take a step back. How did that change how you looked at this year's trip and recalibrating and setting your goals moving forward?
I think the focus for this year is twofold that I learned. The first thing was, and as when you actually just came to get me and said, come in here, it's time to do the podcast, because I was not delaying, I was going to say dilly-dallying, whatever. I was actually sitting on my computer reading all my notes from the trip that I had written from when we were there, and all of the things that I had thought about and a little bit before then. And one of the things that I had really focused on this trip that was very, very important to me was to define and really write. And I think I did it finally on the last day of writing down my purpose. And again, that doesn't need to be etched in stone, but it is for this year as best as possible. And my purpose, and really to say anything that I do or any energy that I put into a day is going to be based around, as best as possible, that purpose. So I really want to be, very mindful of attention. I think that's one thing I guess I would add to is me, I think about things in very kind of in an engineering and an economic way. I'm very practical with things. It's just that's the lens with which I view the world. I'm very flexible as to why things happen the way they are, but relative to people and beliefs. But as far as just kind of the way the world works, it's kind of pretty simple to me. And I've said this to you on many, many occasions that one of the things that came clear to me after this past year was, and I say it all the time to the kids, and I think they give me the weird blank stares, but is the only true scarce resource in the universe is human time. And with all of the things, with all the stuff that we have, with all the things that we are graced with and lucky enough or blessed or however you want to look at it, the one thing that really just resonates for me is I don't get to go back in time. So I am going to be very, very definitive and purposeful with every moment of that time and attention to the best extent possible. Doesn't mean I'm not going to slip up or go, man, I just spent 15 minutes surfing the internet or looking at stuff that I shouldn't have relative to news that I can't do anything about or whatever. But I really wanted to be mindful and with my attention, and it has to be focused towards my purpose. So that's number one. Number two is I found myself paying more attention when I felt scared or uncertain about something, and just accepting it, accepting without fear that feeling of uncertainty, realizing that I can get through anything if I'm just not locked into the way the world should be. Like, it's just kind of like what curveball is going to be thrown at me today or this week or this month, and knowing that I have absolutely the tools just in myself to be able to adapt. Mm-hmm. That it just works out if you are flexible. Because for years that, I would get stressed. I would get pissed when things didn't go as ABC.
And you're a lot better now, for sure.
Yeah. It's not perfect by any means, but I really just kind of said, okay, the world is uncertain. I'm going to accept and almost enjoy living in that space. It was one of the notes that I had written down from our trip was it was a quote from, I think, Voltaire, and he said something like, "Luck is a word we invented to explain the effects of unknown causes." And good. I thought that's there's so much that we think we know and we really don't. And once you just accept that, life gets a hell of a lot more simple and enjoyable, I think.
Yeah. I think that you've replaced the word that I used for intention with purpose, because I think one of the things I often say is where your intention is, your attention goes towards, because that's what you're focusing on. So now you're focusing on your purpose, and now that's where your attention is. How do you think that's going to change this year for you, now that you feel like you have an intention, a purpose, a place to be pointed towards?
I think another word that I just like, and again, it's just the way I view life and the way I think through things, is efficiency. I like not wasting time. I'm not the best at it. I'm not the poster child for maximum efficiency, but at least I'm aware of it. And I think, so to kind of tie those two together, I'm going to do everything I can that is purposeful, that's in my mission of what I've defined for myself, and try to minimize any attention or intention, as you said, that isn't in line with that purpose. Now, the corollary to that is it might just be my intention and purpose for the next 6 hours to just sit and read a book or do nothing.
Yeah.
Or flip through, random stuff. And as long as I have set aside that time in my mind and said, I'm giving myself permission to not do anything today. You don't have to be working towards your purpose all the time, but to know that you can say, I am explicitly spending this day, this week, this hour, this whatever, doing absolutely nothing, or being lazy, or relaxing, or recharging, is absolutely not only acceptable, it's good. And it's when you say, man, I shouldn't have just done all that because I wasn't paying attention to anything. That to me is a waste of time in my own mind.
But when you do it intentionally.
But when I say today I'm not doing anything before 10 a.m., I will just do random stuff or whatever occurs to me, and I've set that time aside. That's purpose in and of itself.
Yeah, that's good. So from your personal perspective, what has been the biggest takeaway from us having our Triple R retreats? And how has it influenced you? Maybe your mindset or the way you approach things?
To be more mindful. I think that if I reflect on previous years, and again, I'm not going to shame myself. I'm not going to beat myself up. That I am not going to have regret. That's something I think you and I talked about a few years ago. That was, if not more, that was one thing that I thought that the two most useless emotions are regret and guilt. And if you do your best to just be a grateful, graceful human being that is imperfect, there's really zero reasons for you to be guilty about something or regret something. And we screw up all the time. We say things that we shouldn't have. We do whatever, but you just look someone in the eye and you apologize for it and you mean it. Then you move on. So what I have learned from our trips, especially this one, is again, that recommitment of being mindful, not regretting the times that in the past years where I haven't been as focused as I should have been, and finding purpose. Again, I keep coming back to that because it's so incredibly important.
Yeah.
For me.
I agree 100%. How do you think that our experiences or our insights from our retreats can benefit the listeners and their own journeys and their own self-improvement?
You know me, and I like to, on my to-do list, I've done a few sections of it, not very many of them, but I am enamored with and fascinated with spending time on the Pacific Crest Trail. I have little desire to walk through, the desert in Southern California, but I love spending time here in the Pacific Northwest where we are. And one of the primary tenets that anybody who is interested in hiking the PCT, no matter if you want to do the through hike and all 2,600 and change miles of it, or you want to be a weekend warrior on a second. But with the one thing, other than leave no trace, which applies anywhere, the one thing you are taught is hike your own hike. Is what they tell you. Hike your own hike. You are going to get out of it what you put into it. You are not doing it for someone else. You are not doing it because of someone else, even if you are hiking with a partner or a friend or someone else, or even a stranger there, and enjoying time meeting and conversing and sharing experiences with another person. You are hiking your own hike. And that person is hiking their own hike at the same time. And just accepting that what you are going to get out of that, or get out of a retreat, or get out of time away, is for you to determine. And it may not be clear to you. It wasn't clear to me when we hopped on the plane. I knew what our big picture goal was. I knew what our annual plans are. I knew that it was to reflect and to recalibrate and to recharge and to set intention for the year and to be, what's the word I'm looking for? It's reflecting, but just self-evaluation in a kind way, I guess you would say. Think about different things to be able to clear your mind and allow yourself to incept ideas that you didn't know existed or so forth, just kind of the clearing your mind. But I didn't know exactly what the plan was when I started. I figured it out throughout it and then put it all into words. That's, for me, that's my private purpose, I guess you would say. But I would say for anybody most people will unintentionally be disappointed in themselves because they set expectations and they didn't even know what they should or could be. Hike your own hike. Have your own retreat. It'll come to you. Just accept that uncertainty. Accept the fact that the answers will materialize when the answers materialize, and to let it go. That's really what I am enjoying about what we've started. And it has made me 100 times more emotionally healthy relative to what I knew about myself than I ever would have thought possible.
Although I just did this 2 weeks with you and experience every single day with you, I just enjoy hearing your take on it so much. It's different than how I would say it. It speaks to a different listener, I think, and I appreciate that so much. So on that same line, I want to ask you, because I think you'd have a different answer to this than I would, which is, what excites you the most about the direction that we're headed in, both personally and in your goals and in the things that I'm doing with Thrive Mindset?
Well, I guess I'll answer the question backwards. I have spent a year not being invited onto your podcast. No, I'm just joking. No, I actually am the one that edits your podcast in post-production so I've kind of been along for the ride, I guess you would say. I've been in my office, you've been in your office, and when you say the podcast is done and I get to working on it, and I just really enjoy seeing you and what you are creating and this community is creating of sharing love and experience and life journeys together, and knowing that we're all in this together, and that you're creating that, and hearing the stories on the back end. That just makes my heart just so happy. I just love that. There's just,
Me too.
yeah, it is. And again, it goes back to, and I'll back it into the first question, which is the uncertainty. I without kind of getting into the specifics, that some of my time and my activities are spent working with people and working with different, some organizations and groups of folks and current issues and so forth. And I was telling a colleague of mine the other day, and again, this isn't my quote. I think I stumbled upon it somewhere, but it said something along the lines of, almost everybody can accept good news and almost everybody can accept bad news. But what very few people can accept is uncertainty. And what people are looking for is certainty. And I think that it is the most powerful tool in your emotional, physical, spiritual, whatever toolkit, to be able to say, there are so many things in this world that I can't control, and I am just going to narrow my focus to the things that I can and gracefully accept the things that are outside of that control. And that includes direction, right? I mean, you had said, what direction are we going in? Well, forward. One of my, this is an old line I've remembered since I was a kid. It's an old comedian from decades ago, and he had this one-liner, and he said, "Anywhere's walking distance if you have the time." I think what the direction is for this year is to apply these fundamental principles that we've fine-tuned and realize that it's not a race. Like, I'm looking forward. Hopefully you'll invite me back in February of 2025, but I'm in no rush to get to February of 2025. You've got a lot of podcasts for me to edit, and I enjoy it on the back end, and I enjoy listening to the stories and the amazing people that you interact with, and the people that share their stories. That's just super fun. And I love that you're adding more of that into the world. That's just awesome.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Well, I completely value your time, and I know how busy you are. So I'm going to ask you one last thing,
okay,
which is, if you could leave our listeners with one more inspiration for achieving their goals or moving forward this year, what would it be?
Well, because I am best at quoting other things.
That's okay.
I think that other folks say things better than I do. And I was actually, as part of, I don't want to say prepping for this I just went upstairs and, before coming down here into the studio, and as kind of a reset, the last thing that I read, and this because it's hanging up in our one of our rooms upstairs, and it's something that, back to my parents, that they shared with me. Is a poem by Max Ehrmann called Desiderata, and very few people know about that. But I would highly encourage any of your listeners to research it. It's a beautiful, elegant. We'll call it one-page instruction manual, I guess you would say. It's a poem, but it's just really special to me, and I'm glad that it's been a part of my life forever. In fact, what we have hanging up there was something that would belong to my parents. But I love near the end of the poem, there's a line that says, "Whether or not it is clear to you, undoubtedly the universe is unfolding as it should." And I just really focus on that line, that it may not be clear to you right in the moment, but the universe is really just saying, "I got you. It'll all be okay. In fact, it'll be better than you think. So I just love that line. So that's what I would pass on to your listeners if I could share something, because I wish I were as, eloquent to be able to put something together like that. But I would just refer them to Desiderata. To me, it makes a lot of sense, and I hope it helps for your listeners too.
I can't think of any better way to have ended that interview with Jeff. Even though he says things in his own way and it's somewhat different than what I say, it always circles back to exactly how I feel. And he's right. Even though you may not know, the universe has you. Absolutely. If you enjoyed the podcast today, if you got something out of it, I just ask you to subscribe, to like, to share, to pass it along to your friends, because I really do think that the guests I have here are adding value to your life and to my life. And I just want to get it out there to the rest of the world. And above all else, remember that I believe in you and you can manifest the life of your dreams.